I have this thirst for blood.
It is good to see you again, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm better than one might expect, Lady Ashbury. Dr. Swansea has asked me to investigate the recent disturbances in the hospital, caused by skulls.
Really? What do you mean?
There is something ominous closing around me, Lady Ashbury. Something spies upon me from the shadows. Something cruel and wicked.
Whatever do you mean, Jonathan?
Do you suspect someone?
I don't know, Jonathan. I steer clear of vampire politics, especially whilst hunters roam the city's streets.
If Sean Hampton and Harriet were not the guilty parties, then who? I saw the bodies and the blood.
Your rebirth has not gone unnoticed, Jonathan. Be extremely careful. If you get in the way of an immortal's plans...
I discovered the most intriguing skull. An elderly woman answering to the name of Old Bridget, and a man who helps them remain hidden in London.
Old Bridget? Peculiar name, I've never heard of her.
According to Old Bridget, skulls can lead a peaceful existence like us. They are even able to nourish themselves by feeding on corpses and the flesh of the dead.
How vile. Please, Jonathan, let's change the subject.
Skulls of London have gone into hiding. Both mortals and immortals plot their extermination.
Yes. Skulls are the orphans of the Vampire Society. They are the shame of their genitors. A disgrace to the vampire that created them.
Goodbye for now, my lady.
Jonathan, at last. I've been worried sick. Have you solved the case of our poor Sean Hampton?
Don't worry, Edgar. The reputation of Pembroke Hospital is secure. Sean Hampton was not the guilty party.
Is that true? Oh, good news. Good news indeed.
I found Harriet Jones. She's much the same old, embittered woman she was, only she's been made a skull. Her transformation did not go well.
Incredible. Well, why not bring her here? We could learn so much by studying her condition. It would be fascinating.
I doubt that. She can barely move. Perhaps we could learn more about the degeneration of skulls.
Perhaps. But she could also belong to a new species. We know so little of the laws that dictate vampire reproduction.
Were there any studies made by your order on the subject?
Not that I'm aware of. I will transmit your discovery to the Brotherhood's primate. He will be delighted.
What do you know of the Ascalon Club?
Not as much as I would like. There have always been rumors about a secret society of vampires operating in the interests of the British Empire, though I've never met a member.
I crossed paths with one. A terrifying creature going by the name of Fergal. He was sent by the Ascalon Club to exterminate the Skulls of the East End.
By the stole, Jonathan. If vampires are eliminating their own progeny, then dark times are upon us. Darker than I've ever witnessed.
Do you think Lady Ashbury would know of them?
Jonathan, our beloved lady is not one for social dalliances, nor the assemblies of dark orders. She's a woman of superior taste and selective acquaintance.
Does the name Old Bridget ring any bells?
I'd never heard of her. Why? A patient of ours? I must confess, I don't know them all.
No, it's just someone I recently met. A fascinating woman. I had thought that perhaps...
By the stole, Jonathan, you've met another vampire. I would appreciate an introduction, if that's the case.
A pleasure as always, Edgar. It's locked.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Such a pleasure to see you again.
Goodbye, Mr. Chidana. Good evening, sir.
So it is true. The famous Dr. Reed has joined us. I can't think of any better news during these terrible times.
Do we know each other?
Actually, yes. We met once before, at the Rockefeller University in New York.
Dr. Tippett, yes, I remember. I was assisting Professor Carell in his research about coronary bypasses. He had nothing but praise for you.
He was also very confident about your future. And look at you now. Eminent surgeon and blood transfusion specialist.
What is the Pembroke Hospital situation? And please, speak freely.
This hospital is not exactly the best of London. I'm sure you are used to working in a better environment.
It's more than enough. In any case, the personnel of a hospital are much more important to me than the building.
Don't be misled by appearances, Dr. Reed. This hospital does not lack talented people. It just lacks hope.
What can you tell me about the staff in the hospital?
Some are really good, and others are not so good. But during this troubled period, there is no time for slander. I prefer to focus on the positive character traits.
Tell me more about cherished people, then.
Nurse Brannigan is a pearl. She is the most helpful and dedicated nurse I've ever worked with. A clever and cheerful woman.
You really seem to admire her skills.
I'll go even further. If she was a man, she would be a damn fine practitioner.
Any opinion about the management?
I don't always agree with Dr. Swansea's reserve, but I must admit he does all he can to keep this facility running during this crisis.
Ah, yes, the burden of command. I was fed up with this concept while serving as a medical officer.
Don't get me wrong. Swansea's a good administrator. I just wish he would get out of his office now and again.
Goodbye, Dr. Tippett. Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
I have some good news, Milton.
What? The epidemic's over?
I retrieved your wallet with all the money and a certain picture.
Well, yeah, Pippa Hawkins is my girl. So what? Is it the difference of skin colour that bothers you?
Not at all, Milton.
Good. Please, take this money anyway. To remind you to keep your mouth shut. Not everybody is as broad-minded as you, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Milton.
Knight of the glorious battalion of Pembroke?
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
I'd like to see your goods.
Wise choice, Dr. Reed. A reliable gun is what everybody needs these days.
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
Goodbye, Milton.
else in the East End.
Good evening, Dr. Tippett.
Dr. Reed, any good news to share?
What is the Pembroke Hospital situation? And please, speak freely.
This hospital is not exactly the best of London.
It's more than...
Don't be...
Goodbye, Dr. Tippett. Good evening, Mr. Cox.
Dr. Reed. Still working at night, I see. I like that.
Why is that?
People who don't sleep at night always seem more alive to me. More interesting, one way or another.
I'll leave you for now, Mr. Cox.
Miss, please, I feel... Hey!
You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Cox. I hope you're starting to take better care of yourself.
This place is full of sickness and decay. How could I get better in such a dump?
Consider yourself lucky that I'm treating all of my patients equally. But don't push your luck.
Don't play the innocent with me. I'm sure you have good reasons to act this way. And also weaknesses that can be exploited.
I'll leave you for now, Mr. Cox.
When I get back, I'll have a word with Tom. He's really pissed me off this time.
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening.
I'd like to see your...
Wise choice, Doctor.
Good evening, Dr. Reed. Such a pleasure to see you again.
Do you need medical attention?
Well, the proximity of the dead is not quiet can be appreciated.
Don't take too many risks with your health, Mr. Chidana. None of us are immune to this disease.
And that is a good thing. Death and disease is a constant reminder of our mortality. But you have my thanks, Dr. Reed.
Goodbye, Mr. Chidana.
Safe.
Good evening, Milton.
Good evening, Doctor. Still trying to save lives?
Do you need any medical help, Milton?
I'm afraid I do. Like everyone in this hospital. It's a sad state of affairs when even the hospital workers are worried about disease.
Our job brings us into contact with all kinds of infections, Milton. There's no shame in being ill while you're in a hospital.
That's easy for you to say, Doctor. I get the feeling you don't fall sick often. Well, thanks, anyway.
Goodbye, Milton. Good evening, nurse. I'm Dr. Jonathan Reed, the new surgeon here at the Pembroke.
Dr. Swansea has already told us about you, sir. I'm Nurse Gwyneth Brannigan. Welcome to the Pembroke Hospital.
Did he really? It's a good thing I wasn't hoping to keep a low profile.
All members of staff have already read about your new blood transfusion technique. Dr. Swansea made sure of that.
I see. Well, I'm a little surprised, but I suppose I'll just have to deal with this unexpected notoriety.
You must know, blood transfusions are Dr. Swansea's primary subject of research. He is convinced it is the future.
How are things here?
Not good, to say the least. We're struggling against an invisible enemy, more lethal than any bullet from a gun. It's hard, Doctor.
An invisible enemy. Quite a poetic term for a disease, especially from a nurse.
Sorry, Doctor. These last few weeks have been exhausting. We could all do with a good night's sleep.
Do you think this hospital can survive the epidemic?
We are all volunteers here. and we're trying to hold fast, but how do we beat an invisible killer? Some nurses have already resigned.
I'm not familiar with all the staff yet. Perhaps you could help me.
Brilliant professionals, most of them. Dr. Swansea has a gift for recruiting talent.
Most of them. Is there a problem I should know about, nurse?
It would be inappropriate for me to speak ill of a colleague.
Is there anyone that stands out?
Well, I have never met someone as dedicated as Dr. Tippett's. He should be a standard for us all here. If only he were younger.
Why should his age be a problem?
I guess it's fair to say he's always pushing himself to the limits. He just doesn't know when to stop and get some rest.
Nurse Brannigan, if you do know something, please tell me. Anything you say will be held in confidence.
No. I may disagree with some conduct, but in the end, everybody is doing their best.
Why does Dr. Tippett claim you're the main reason he keeps working, despite his fatigue?
If it wasn't for him, I probably would have left the Pembroke years ago.
Dr. Tippett does not think of you as just a nurse anymore, does he?
If you're suggesting he's not taking my gender into consideration when it comes to medical practice and knowledge, I really hope he doesn't.
Goodbye, nurse. Call me if you need assistance. It's locked. Good evening, sir. I am Dr. Jonathan Reed of the Pembroke Hospital. May I be of assistance?
Dr. Reed. So it's you who saved my friend Oswald. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
And you are?
Newton Blight. Oswald and I recently returned from the war.
You are always welcome at the Pembroke Hospital. As a former officer, I'll be honored to welcome a fellow veteran.
I'm not giving up on bringing Oswald back to the hospital. I just need to convince him that he needs some help.
Perhaps he needs to reach that decision by himself.
Could you speak to him? He doesn't usually listen to doctors, but perhaps because you've been through it, you can talk him round.
Why do you stay here now that Mr. Thatcher's back?
It's complicated. Since the war, Oswald's been really nervous with the idea of entering any hospital. And me, I've got my own issues.
Can you speak about them?
Rats, sir. Even seeing one, they turn me. Just want to run. It's that fear that stopped me from going after Oswald when he left.
What can you tell me about the war, Mr. Blight? If you want to speak about it, of course.
War was... well, you know, sir. The stench of death everywhere. Your mates lying bleeding in the mud. At home. Blood.